Wow, I don't even know myself. This is crazy. Um, the the word I is paradoxical. It's used in different ways. Now, in terms of knowing oneself, knowledge is public, meaning knowledge requires a justification. Knowledge requires a play in the language. So, what does it mean to have a subject, a subjective consciousness, or a sense of one going through a routine of taking normative values and saying that they can triangulate, reason, or come to grips with something that they're only suspicious of, and that if it matches that suspicion, then they say they knew it. And so, by that same accord, one will say, I know myself. I think, therefore I am. But in terms of all knowledge, I will contend that there is a class of cases for all knowledge about who Das Pook is. And there's another class of cases for who this Teddy is. And there's this other class of cases for who this Jeff is. So everyone who has ever interacted with any of these characters can dump knowledge into this public bank. And that individual who's discussing it can deny it because they're the subject or the object, if you will, of that public base. But I can say things like, oh, well, Jeff, he is precocious and he moves in this particular fashion. And this particular move seems as if it's suave, it's debonair, and yet he's kind of scrappy looking. And he smokes a lot. So I'm adding to this knowledge of who Jeff is. Now, Jeff could come out and say, I deny that. I'm not suave. I'm not precocious. I just simply gathered information. So he could go on and present himself. But my contention with this, my adding to the public and his denial of it is also public. So the one side of the paradox, the one side of the Mobius strip on who I is public domain. It's everything anyone wants to add to that. But the other side is the navel. And by navel, I mean the center that twists in and is the vision that the subject of I is saying that they know where the rest of the world cannot know because they're capable of lying, deceiving, fooling, punning, doing all sorts of things to the objective pool. But all of those things come about eventually as being suspect to lying. And so once again, the reason it's a Mobius strip, the reason it's a paradox is because as soon as one realizes that they're lying and they expose it, then they're exposing it to the public pool. So someone might say they have a toothache and then not have a toothache, and they would convince you long enough for you as the viewer to know that not only is that in their character, so now we can say, oh, well, Jeff lies, Jeff puns, Jeff charades, Jeff is satirical, and we can throw that into the public pool. Now that is as much of Jeff as anything that the Jeff might open his mouth and close his mouth and claim to be his own. So what does the other side of the Mobius strip say? What is the other side of the perspective? The other side of the perspective is not the public pool. It's that sensation, that grounding of multiple normatives that can gear itself differently than whatever the public pool is. So by the gearing of different normatives, we have suspicion. We have what someone says is, I suspected that, and now I know it. And that statement, I suspected it, and now I know it. That makes sense because they had conjured the image, even though they didn't know what was going on. They conjured it. Now, in the movement of the grammar within the head, of the placement of sensations or graphics or whatnot that is occurring, they can be said to know themselves better, to be looking at the inside of a subway tunnel. One individual is looking at the inside of the subway tunnel, and the other individuals are walking on the outside on the city above saying, yep, see how that subway tunnel goes in this direction, and you see how the wind comes out in this area and that area, and how you can hear it and feel it and see it. My contention, though, is this, is that the individual inside of the subway tunnel is going to describe themselves to the public pool. And they're going to know this certain amount of information. But the public pool also knows something about the subway system that the subway does not know themselves. Now, they can agree with each other, they can see each other's point of view and conglomerate the two. And so this is the paradox of I. And the point is that the individual within the subway tunnel, if I tell you everything about myself, oh, I'm this old, I'm this tall, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is what I do, this is where I went, blah, 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 blah. I'm putting it all out there. Now it's all out there, it's all public, so it's all public knowledge. But if I miss an aspect, maybe someone will say, oh, well, he's a wrinkly, naughty sort of guy, or he's kind of mean, or he's kind of nice, or he's kind of melancholic, meaning something that I wouldn't say to myself. Now, that description of me, I may be in denial, but nevertheless, it's still there. It's still public. So the point is someone can ramble on and on and on about the inside of their tunnel, claiming that this whole motion, this whole progression of rambling about themselves is the I. And they may feel content within this continuous ramblings. But it doesn't mean that they know who they are. It doesn't mean that they know any more than the next person who it is they are. But they're going to contend with it because they're the leader of the verb I. They are the subject of the noun I. So we want to grant them a certain perspective that is being inside the tunnel that no one else can ever get into. But it's the pointing to the tunnel expressed that becomes public. Now, I'll say that at any given time, I can only focus on a certain periphery. I can only sense what I'm sensing, and I'm only remembering certain events in my life, and these happen now. Okay, these are happening now, and so everything else about the me is manifest in the being of me. And so we say that is the I. Oh, it's the being of me that is the me, that is the I. It's everything I move through. But what is it that I can state with words, since words are public, what is it that I can really state about the inside of the tunnel that someone else cannot speculate upon, someone else cannot relate to, someone else could just not get it? Well, there's really nothing I can state and say, I know this about myself and you don't. Because as soon as it's stated, it's public knowledge. That's how we empathize. That's how we know the other one, is through the public grammar. So you may be confident that there is a you, and you're not wrong. But keep in mind that everything you tell yourself about who it is you are is something that you could express in a language, and that language is public. So, for example, Wittgenstein will contend, and I'll contend, I can know the pain of a woman's childbirth as much as the woman who's giving birth knows that pain. But by know, we mean her expression of knowledge is all that the public has, is that expression. And as long as I can mimic that expression, as long as I can put it forth in an orderly grammatical fashion, I can be said to know what the pain of childbirth is like. Do I ever experience it? Does it ever come out of me? Do I ever give birth? Do I only have all this vibe that is me, the carcass? Yeah. So would I be said to be lying if I said I knew the pain of childbirth? I will say no, but of course, it's not the same as being inside of the tunnel. I can never fully sleeve myself in anyone else's experience, and so that quote of anyone else's